Okay, this video is going to be about MS Teams, specifically the chat functionality and some of the tips and tricks that you can do with your chat to engage in more professional communication and to have clearer understanding of how the chat program works and some of the syntax. Okay, so here you see I have some of my teams. I'm on my teams bar here, and I got some CS courses here. I'm going to create a playground course here, and these are the options when you go to create or to join or create a team. What you will most likely be encountering is join a team with a code. So I'm going to create a team now, and then I'm going to show you what the code is. But if you were to join this team, which you can't because I'm going to delete it afterwards, but you would use this join a team with a code. So you might get a code via email or some way a code is going to be distributed for you to join one of your teams. Okay, so I'm going to show you where I get that code, and whenever you get one of those codes, you would click on join a team with a code and type in that code. All right, but I'm going to do something different. I'm going to create a team, and this is going to be a class, and I'm going to say this is Teams Playground, and this is just a place to play with teams. All right, and next, creates the team fairly quickly. So you can select students in your organization or other teachers, people you want to have teaching privileges. I'm going to skip this for now. And here we're in our Teams Playground group. I can click on the settings menu, the ... additional stuff, and edit the team or manage the team. So managing the team, I go to settings, and there's this team code option. Okay, so I can generate a team code, and then anyone who has this team code will be able to join. All right, now you have to be within the organization to be able to join. So it says guests won't be able to join with the team code. So it has to be somebody within the organization. So this is what you would do. You would copy and paste this into, when we go back to Teams, all teams, you would go to join or create team, and then you would type in the code here. You paste that in and click join team. Okay, we're going to go back to our new team that we created. And one of the things you notice is this idea of a conversation. Okay, so if I click on new conversation, I'm basically starting a new train of thought, a new thread. All right, so I want say type something in inline code blocks. Oops, there we go. Inline code blocks. All right, so this is the beginning of a conversation, and you see underneath it has a reply. So if I start a new conversation, that's a new topic, a new idea. I want to make sure if I'm replying to somebody's comment, I always use this reply box. Otherwise, it's really hard to follow the flow of a conversation. So every conversation should be about a particular topic, and if you're responding to a particular topic, always reply rather than starting a new conversation. Okay, so this conversation is about inline code blocks. What do we mean there? Well, if I type something in inline code blocks, I use backticks. So I use the backtick character. The backtick character is to the left of the numeric 1 character, or right above the tab character, and I surround this with backticks, and you see Microsoft Teams renders this as soon as I complete that. It removes the backticks from my view, but under the hood, it's still the backticks are still there, and we see it changes how this is rendered. We see that inline is now in monospace font. Monospace font means that the L is the exact same width as the E. So all of the characters have one space width, monospace, right? So that's basically how almost every single text editor works for editing computer science code, right? Software. So this is very helpful for when you're trying to communicate something that the computer, either computer code or an error message or something like that. Always use backticks to surround something when it's computer input. It helps you communicate your ideas more easily to your audience, right? So this is inline. Keep putting an A in there. This is an inline block. So let's say is. Now, one thing that makes it tricky the way Microsoft Teams does this is it's kind of hard to tell what is inside of the backticks and not, because it actually removes those backticks and renders it as code. All right, so you have to kind of pay attention to your cursor, and I might have to say this is beforehand, and then this is an inline code block. All right, now this syntax using backticks is actually a language called Markdown. Okay, so Markdown translates into markup, which is basically just HTML most of the time. All right, so this is shorthand syntax to create HTML code, and the tags that represent this code is actually just a code tag, CODE. You would in HTML, so I can say HTML, and if I want to go to a new line in the reply box, I have to hit, if I hit enter, it just sends it. So I have to hit shift enter, and that goes to a new line. And now I can make another code block, but I'm going to use triple backticks. And a code block is for multi-line code. So here we just have an inline code block. So that's just one thing that's in line with other text, right? A code block is multi-line. That's a multi-line code block. So here, the HTML code that this Markdown turns into would be something like this. So I have the opening tag for HTML, and then I'd say here is, or I might type in some code here so we could do some fine food. Say add 5, and this will be Python, and then this would be print x plus 5, right? Something like that, and slash code. So in HTML, this would, display this code in a code block, right? And actually, I'd probably want to have non-breaking space. But at any rate, the point is, this is what you would have to write in HTML to get the code to look nice. Like in this response, we see this looks like code. I can tell that this is computer code someone's written. It's monospace, it has indentation, it has that sort of stuff that's important to help us read code, right? And so what that would look like, that HTML translates to basically add 5, okay? So this is nice. We can tell exactly what this is. This is a function somebody's defined. We have indentation, all that stuff. So the triple backticks is Markdown syntax. That Markdown syntax basically translates to HTML syntax, and then the HTML is injected into this this view. Okay, that's how most chat programs work. I know that's a little bit complicated, but I wanted to show you something in Atom, the Atom text editor. I'm going to create a simple file here. Let's just save this to my desktop, and we're going to call this markdown.md. Markdown files have the .md extension. Okay, so now we have a Markdown file here, and we can see we can use little Markdown syntax as shortcuts. So I could say this is the heading. This is heading 1. So if you know anything about HTML, this would be like an H1 tag. This is 2 of those is an H2 tag. Right? And then I can use the triple backticks here, and I can specify what language it is or not. I can just say it's text, and then I can do the same thing we did before. So add 5 x print x plus 5. All right, and then I would close off the code block. So the triple backticks surround the code. This tells you what kind of code it is. So this, instead of just text, I might say this is Python 3. But this is pretty standard Markdown, okay? And if I were to compile this, and I have a plugin with Atom that allows me to run Markdown, so I hit Control-M, Shift Control-M, I think, and this is the view. I have to got a spacing issue, I believe. All right, so we see heading 1, heading 2. This little syntax allows us to format the output in an interesting way. I can bold things. I can say this is bold, and if I put 2 asterisks around whatever I want to bold, it becomes bold. I can say this is italic, and I can put an underscore around it. I can say this is underlined. I think this is the syntax for that. No, that does bold too. There's one for underlined as well. There's strike through, different things. So the main idea here is you can format the text just using these short little character shortcuts. To bold something, you just surround it in asterisks. Italic is the underscores around it. Code, if you want to display something in code, like this, right? We use triple backticks, and we also have this is an inline code block. All right, so we see this makes it look like that the computer, this is specifically something that the computer gave us, or it's a command or something like that, right? So you always want to use these backticks for communicating code. Now, all of these really help you organize your ideas and help you be a better communicator, right? Which is very important in computer science. Communication is commonly lacking among engineers, so it's a very, very important skill, and a lot of times you can get a job just based on really good communication. So when we bounce back over here to MS Teams, we see a lot of the same things work. So this is bold. All right, I can do 2 asterisks, and that's bold. I can say this is italic, and I can put underscores around it. Now notice what happened there. I put the underscore around it at the end first, and then I put the underscore at the beginning last. And because of the way Microsoft does this, it doesn't parse this text and replace it if you do it in the wrong order. So most chat programs don't do things the way Microsoft Teams is doing them, and I kind of wish Microsoft Teams wouldn't have done it this way. They're trying to be fancy, where as soon as you type it, it renders it in the italic, but then you lose the context of what's actually being written. So the actual code behind that might be this, but you don't see that anymore, you just see the rendered one. And so that adds some complexity, and it kind of makes it difficult to edit things. So you'll encounter this, like when I type in here, is this going to be in italics or not? So it is, right? But it's kind of hard to tell when the italics starts and when it ends, and you'll encounter that especially with the code blocks syntax. So you'll have to play around with this a little bit, and it's going to fight you a little bit sometimes. So just be aware of that. Sometimes you'll have to delete it and come back, right? So that is italic, and there's lots of different options. I'm not sure if the headings work. Let's see if headings work. Yeah, they don't. Well, that might be a heading. So you type it, and then you type 2 hash characters, and it increases the font. All right, that's interesting. So anyway, play around with this. It's sort of Markdown, and the thing with Markdown is there's lots of different, what they call flavors of Markdown. They don't all behave exactly the same way. So MS Teams' flavor of Markdown might be a little bit different than GitHub's flavor of Markdown, or what have you. So there's lots of different types of Markdown, and you just kind of have to play around with it. But most of them use this sort of style, this syntax. Like there are other things you can use, 3 dashes for like a dividing line, that sort of thing. So Markdown is kind of nice. You can make lists. I could say 1, this, and then that, and then I can indent. Right, and it it will keep making lists. You can make ordered lists like that, and you can do that in teams as well. So I could say one this, and if I hit tab, it will go to the next one, the other, right? So also, one of the things, because of the way Microsoft does that, it's a little strange. Normally when you press enter, the expectation is for it to send the message. But if you're in the construction of a list or something like this, when I press enter, it does not send the message. It instead goes to the next list item, right? And I can press enter again, and press enter again, and now I'm finally out of the list item construction. And then if I press enter, it sends it. So that's a little tricky too with the way Microsoft has chosen to do this. One of the things specifically when you're sending code, here's my code, and so as soon as you hit the triple backticks, it starts a code block, and you never have to do the trailing triple backticks like we would in Markdown. Microsoft handles that for you automatically, but it's kind of hard to understand exactly how it does that. So, for example, if I type, a function foo x, and if I press enter here, it just goes to the next line. It doesn't go, it doesn't send the message, and it doesn't even leave the text box. So then I can press tab, and I can say print x, and if I press enter, it still goes to the next line. But what if I want a space in my code? If I press enter again, I leave the code block. So I have to go back in the code block. I can press enter, but if I actually want space inside of the code block, I have to use shift enter. So shift enter becomes very important. So here I go shift enter, shift enter. Well, it should be letting me, but see, this is some of the quirky behavior that I'm not particularly ecstatic about the way Microsoft did this. So you might want a space there, right? I might want something like, now I'm actually going to call the foo function, and I could say something like hello. Now I have to go back here and hit shift enter to get it to look the way that I want. So these are all things that, this is just the way Microsoft has chosen to do this, and I don't particularly care for it, and you might run into this and it's going to be a little bit tricky for you. But you need to play around with this stuff and learn how to use it. You can talk to your friends, or you can, I'm not sure if you can create a chat or not, but you need to be aware of this stuff so that you can learn how to use this. So I'm going to start a conversation in each of my classes where it's the playground conversation, and you can just play with stuff. And nobody has to read that conversation. It's just for you to be able to type some stuff and play with the syntax. All right. Another thing that's common is you can just copy and paste the code. If you're sending me your code, always send me your code directly. Don't send it to general chat. But once you create the triple backticks, just paste it in here, and it'll look fine, and then press enter. All right. Don't paste code without the triple backticks because it's very, very hard to read. All right. So this is going to help you communicate. It's going to help you convey your ideas. I always use this syntax, and it really makes conveying whatever topic you're trying to discuss, it makes it that much easier to digest. It's very important that your audience can understand what you're saying. So use these tools and play around with them, and you'll get much better at communication. All right. So that's a little demo on MS Teams. There's lots of different options. One more thing, you can edit any of your messages. So by clicking this extra menu, the ... menu, you can click edit, and you can edit the text. And if I just add something in there, it now says this was edited. Okay. Now this is important. Try not to edit your messages and change the meaning. Okay, because there's a dialogue, there's a back and forth. So you can edit your posts, but generally just try to fix typos or misspellings. Don't change the meaning when you edit something, because that makes the conversation difficult to follow. When somebody asks a question about what you typed and then you edit what you typed to not say that anymore, then that question doesn't make sense, and the entire flow of the conversation gets sort of derailed. It's very hard to understand what happened in the conversation. So, and don't get down on yourself if you ask a question and you think it after you hear the answer that you think it's a stupid question. It's not a stupid question. Chances are if you have the question, someone else does too. It's very important that you leave that up and everyone can look at it to understand and learn from everyone else's questions. So it's very important that you don't change the meaning of what you wrote, but go ahead and you can change typos and different things like that, or maybe add clarifications, but try not to change the underlying meaning of what you typed when you edit something. Okay. And so all of these responses you see have been under this, type something in inline code blocks, and that's all part of this topic, and that's fine. If we want to talk about something else, we can have a new conversation for it, but there might be people talking about this topic as well as the new topic at the same time, and if we don't reply to the conversation directly using the reply box, then it becomes very difficult to follow who's saying what about which topic. Okay, so the reply is very important. And then one more thing, basically you can use this format box to do all the stuff we talked about with bold, underline, italic, underline. Behind the scenes, Microsoft is probably just using Markdown anyway, but you can use bulleted lists and all this stuff. But there's shortcuts for all that with typing. I tend to not use any of this. I just use the keyboard shortcuts. But if you do need to, you can use this stuff. Normally, I don't like using it though. So I'm going to discard that message. But that's important to know that you can do that as well. And you can use these emojis and stuff too. So that's the basics. Be professional and try to use some of this stuff to help you convey ideas, because communication is absolutely critical, especially in technical fields. All right. So hopefully that gives you some ideas of how to work with MS Teams, at least the chat portion of it. And hopefully you have some good communication. All right, thanks for watching.